And this is a very delicious looking chocolate chip muffin. Unfortunately, this is the amount of sugar contained in such muffin. Today I'm going to be showing you a recipe which is a little more guilt-free, I'd say, much lower in sugar. It uses Huel in place of most of the flour, and Huel, if you don't know about it, is a kind of powdered meal replacement, but it's basically just a very nutritious powder, and we'll see as I go into the nutrition later on what that means for this cake. But I won't ramble on too long, let's get started by making this stuff. Right, so we're starting off with our bowl and a banana, which we're going to mash up. To this, I'm then going to add a kind of butter. So I'm using this kind of spreadable butter stuff, but literally any kind of fat kind of thing you got lying around can go into this. Next up, we're putting an egg and mixing that in there. I know the texture's looking a bit iffy here. You just got to try and get it as smooth as you can, and it really doesn't matter too much. At this stage, I add in the baking powder to get that spread evenly around there. And then it's time for the dry ingredients. So the main one is Huel, as I mentioned, and I'm using a little bit of flour. I've been playing around with the ratios a little bit to see, what kind of happens, and I find that a little bit of flour produces a better result. As I mentioned, Huel is this basically nutritionally complete powder. It's predominantly designed to be used in like shakes to kind of replace meals or add extra meals in, but it's really good for baking as well. And if you're interested in trying out Huel, I've put kind of my referral link in the description. You can get a little bit of discount, and I'll get a little bit of discount as well. I really like it. I might make a separate video about it in the future, but anyway, let's carry on with this recipe. In this recipe, I'm also adding a sweetener ingredient like I did in my last one. I really like using dark chocolate. I've got some 70% dark chocolate here, and it's like my absolute favorite thing to add in, but you could also go with like dried fruit, milk chocolate, honey, literally whatever you fancy. It's just something to add a little bit of sweetness, but not the crazy amount of sugar you get in those muffins. Once that's all mixed up, you'll have something that kind of resembles a cake batter. That goes into your tin and in your oven, which you will have preheated at about 175, and it should take about 20 to 30 minutes to cook, depending on how deep your pan is. Just like you would with a cake, you want to check this by sticking a knife in, and if the knife comes out clean, then you're good to go. You can take that out and let it cool. Storage-wise, I think keeping this in the fridge is probably your best bet. I think it would definitely last around a week, but I think you could also easily just freeze it if you wanted to make a really big batch. So here is a piece of our finished product. Take a look at that. So obviously it's not going to win any beauty contests, but I'm a big fan of how this cake turns out. It's a lot better than the protein bars I made in the last video in terms of the texture. It's definitely more like a cake, a lot lighter. Although I would say it's still kind of quite a dense cake. It's not going to be light and fluffy because, well, it just doesn't work out like that. As for the taste, I really like it. Like the dark chocolate just makes it perfect. Just in case you're curious, the banana doesn't really come out in the flavor in this. So, if you're not a fan of banana, then don't worry about it. So if I scoot over to the side, you can see what went into this particular batch. It was quite a small batch. I'd usually end up using double the ingredients you can see here. Like with my other recipes, it is very much something you can modify as you please. Again, I've linked the spreadsheet I use in the description if you're as nerdy as I am and you want to play around with those numbers and see how it affects the nutrition. Later on in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the variations you can make, some of my favorite ones, so do stay tuned for that. But otherwise, let's talk about how the nutrition compares with that muffin we talked about at the beginning. So you can see that the calories in the Nish cake, I'm honestly going to run out of names for my concoctions at some point, but let's carry on with it for now. The calories are 25% lower, but the thing I'm more interested in is the sugar is just a fifth of what you get in the muffin, which I kind of find staggering. Now you do have some sweeteners in the Huel that's kind of providing a bit of sweetness, otherwise you'd have a really bland thing on your hands. And I think from my research into sweeteners, this quantity of sweeteners is not like particularly dangerous, and I think it's definitely healthier than having that barrel load of sugar. If we dig in further to the numbers, we can see the main differences are the amount of carbs, basically the amount of sugar. I've actually got about the similar amount of fat in my cakes here, and there is actually much more protein, not a huge amount of protein. It's 11 grams per 100 gram compared to the, say, 25 in the protein bars I had in the last video, so it's not a super protein snack. Now I'd say cost is the one thing that maybe I don't win out on. You can see that the cost is about 54p per 100 gram for my concoction, whereas supermarket brand baked goods are always absurdly cheap, so the muffin's only about 40p per 100 gram. Now the cost is primarily coming from the Huel. It's relatively expensive, but actually for what it is, I don't think it's too bad at all. So finally onto those variations. As I was alluding to, the protein in this recipe is not massive, but you can boost that up really easily. All you have to do is replace some of the Huel or the flour with a scoop of protein powder. So for example, you could take out 25 grams of the Huel and replace that with protein powder. The other big variation is Huel have a lot of different flavors. I've used the vanilla Huel here, but you can also use the coffee Huel and also like dissolve some instant coffee in some hot water and pour that into the mix, and that makes a really good result as well. That's a nice coffee flavor. If you do end up trying one of the other Huel flavors out. Let me know how it turns out, because I've mainly stuck to vanilla and coffee, so I'm not sure if I want to try a different one out at this point. As I said, also, you can really play around with the added ingredients. They don't even have to be sweetened ingredients. If you're really not a fan of sweetness at all, you could add in some chopped nuts or seeds or something like that, just add a bit of crunch. You can really, you know, change this up every time you make it so that it's like a different recipe every time. And I think I've covered everything I wanted to say, so I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you do try the recipe, let me know how it turns out, and if you've made any cool variations, I'd love to hear about them, because then I can also implement them myself. Do subscribe to this channel to keep updated with content. I will try and keep it semi-regular. I do also have another channel where I do kind of tech reviews. If you want to check that out, the link is in the description or somewhere here. And otherwise, I'll catch you in the next one.